Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Unblocking Success podcast. If you're new around here, my name is John Pierce. I'll be the host throughout this episode. At the time of recording, I'm the head of commercial here at London Drainage Facilities. This is, of course, a London Drainage Facilities production. Now, on today's episode, I am pleased, proud and excited to produce to you a titan within the block and estate management industry, a founder of multiple businesses, one being JFM Block and Estate Management. I am, of course, referring to one of the co-founders, Joe Mallon. Enjoy. Joe, I'm going to kick this off first and foremost. I think probably a good place for me to start this in total transparency. We were just talking off air a moment ago. So I personally have been a fan of the JFM brand, a bit of a fanboy actually over the past 2 years. And I suppose over the last 6 months, I've really seen the ramping up that you guys and girls have been doing as a brand to push your services further and further. And it's very evident working on our side of the fence as a supplier, the type of caliber of people that you've got woven into JFM. We will come on to talking about the people, but it's always great to get a backstory about how the business actually started. So maybe if we start there, how did it all begin for you?
Well, I made a conscious decision to become a property manager. I don't like saying I fell into property management, which is what most people say, which is fair enough because people at school don't grow up thinking I'm going to be a block manager. I'm going to run blocks of flats for a living generally. But I don't like saying I fell into it because I remember making a conscious decision, having landed at a block and estate management company, having come from a construction background years ago. To go into it, to say, you know what, I can do this, I'm going to give it a shot. So I felt like it was a conscious decision for me. I really worked hard at it. I found it a lot less boring being a block manager than other office jobs that I tried when I was younger in my early days. I ended up with a good friend at a firm of chartered surveyors in Camden Town, which was very unique, high pressure, but also quite a creative place where things you could carve out a piece of the company almost to sort of run with as an employee, and that taught me and James a lot in those days. But for various reasons, forces came together and created a set of circumstances where it became advantageous for me and James to start thinking about planning our own company. I had this really strong creative desire in me to create things out of nothing. That's where a lot of my motivation comes from. And when there was an opportunity to come along and start a business with James, who was very like-minded like me, based on serving primarily homeowners as opposed to some of the traditional structures in play, I jumped at it. I got a real buzz out of creating something, like I say, out of nothing. We were qualified and we worked really hard as it was. And being able to apply that to your own thing was just an amazing experience for me. So I had this creative drive in me, and as does James, I know, to do something for ourselves. And JFM was the vehicle through which we did that. We launched in 2015, having decided that we were going to make a niche model for resident management companies only. At that time. And at that time, we weren't working for housing developers or freehold investors because we had a very niche model. We've since evolved that. But the ultimate reason for it, I think, was a desire for creativity, also a sort of an independent streak in me to get going. Yeah.
And I can imagine in the early days when you're thinking about setting off on the path of doing your own thing, there must have been bumps on the way, lessons, right, that we pick up as we go. What kind of pitfalls would you say, looking back now, we can kind of identify as, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that turn, I could have done that slightly different. Is there anything like that along the way that you look back at now?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of our company's current core values, or our 6 core values, is we're always learning.
Yeah.
And we continue to have pitfalls and we continue to have issues. And way back in year one, for certain, I remember we had a budget worked out for year one, our startup year.
Yep.
And of course, you're starting, in our case, we started with a government loan to get going, a sort of startup loan. We're block and estate managers. We do a lot of budgets. So we budgeted out a very nice looking plan for the year. and that got torn up after about 4 weeks or so, because what we realized is we were dedicating a lot of our energy into things that just weren't relevant to a startup. We diverted a lot of our marketing budget from all these different types of marketing into Google Ads and Google Ads alone, and we became expert, I would say, in a short space of time due to the high pressure of those first few months at Google Ads, how to make them work, how to get them going, how to get your message out there, and I think that was a bit of a lesson in coming up with budgets when you don't really know what the pressures are going to be.
Yeah.
Other pitfalls, I think, just going in at a higher price point for staff as early as possible. It just saves the pain later down the line when things don't quite work out. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tough industry. It's really competitive for staff. And I mean, where we're at now is that we, with our mission statement, it's to create the best environment to empower the best people to provide the best possible property management service. And what that basically means in reality is us creating the best conditions for property managers in particular to come and work for us. Highly competitive, high turnover of staff in this sector, and if you can't attract the best property managers, you've got no business. And we want to be the best, and so it does mean getting in at a higher price point. It does mean creating better benefits and being more staff focused straight away, and that's where we ended up being.
And do you think that's a common theme running through the block and estate management industry as a whole? I know certainly from our perspective, right, as a supplier, you can have conversations with one person one day, and then literally the very next week, that same person you were in conversation with has hopped over and has effectively ran to some form of said competitor, right? And do you think a lot of that is driven by the price point of people not getting what they need straight out of the gate and too much of the penny pinching at the beginning stages, or?
I don't think many property managers start off dissatisfied, but I think when you've got a situation where the job has got a lot harder for a block and estate manager. And back when I started, it was hard enough. But there was a lot of emphasis on cleaning and gardening and getting that right. Whereas now, with the Building Safety Act, we are so much more part of the wider building safety puzzle than we've ever been before. And the sorts of buildings that have been going up the last 20 years, as you all know, are just much more complex things. And so that it's becoming more of a technical role, while also being a more stressful role at the same time. You know, having fire safety in your hands to deal with. What it means is people are leaving the sector faster than is desirable, and that is creating a supply issue. And that's why you find this need to be at the higher end of the scale to insulate yourself.
And if I take it back, I mean, one thing that I absolutely love about your brand, especially on your website, you've got the story, the timeline, right, of how it all worked out.
Yeah.
And taking us back to 2015, and your original photo shots, right, were taken on your phones.
Yeah.
And they were your promo shots.
Yeah.
And then obviously looking to where you've got now, it's such a different landscape, right? But how was it in the early days of when you first set off? What was that feeling like the moment you got your feet under the desk in your first premises and you're actually going, right, this is now us?
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I think we had the company for about a month, or we'd launched the company in April 2015, and it was in May 2015 that we moved into a 2-man office in a serviced office building in which is now a block of flats in Perivale.
Do you serve it?
No, we do not. And it was a brilliant feeling. There was really this feeling that I hadn't had before, where I felt very connected to society and everything that was going on. All those sorts of news reports that once bored me, you know, whether it be politics, whether it be the economy, I started to become much more interested in, because I felt part of society in a different way, and that was something I never expected. So waking up in those early days with that first office, it was, it was springing my step, getting out the door, and the whole idea of the Monday morning blues was just not a thing.
And in terms of like business development from the early days, what did that start to look like? Just to give a flavour, for so many people have this dream of naturally, I'm going to go and be an entrepreneur of some capacity. And I often refer to it as a wantrepreneur, right? So we have those dreams, but we kind of get blinded, we get roadblocked by maybe a bit of fear. Our own home lives might change or what have you. But that actual act of, this is now going to be me, this is how we're going to generate our household income, this is revenue, this is the plan moving forward. When you're actually in role and then thinking about, how do I get said clients? What did that start to look like in the early days?
Well, one thing that I'm really pleased that we did in the early days is we put a lot of time into our business plan. So before we even launched JFM, and I think this is where a lot of people fall down. And I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who want to, or entrepreneurial-minded people who are employed and are desperate to get out. I'm amazed at the amount of people who don't crack on and just do a business plan, but I guess it is hard for some people. I mean, I've always been good at writing. I've always been good at putting together things, and likewise, James. James has always been excellent with numbers. He's a maths graduate, and we just fuse our two skills together to create a business plan. A lot of what allowed us to grow the business comes from that business plan. It was one of the best bits of work probably I've ever produced, that business plan. And I flash back to my uni days and wish I applied myself more, but we really applied ourselves. What we would do is we'd finish a hard day at the office in Camden Town, and then we'd often meet up in the pub.
Yep.
And we'd get the laptops out for an hour or two, and we work on our business plan together. James will be the other side, and I'll be at the other side, and we'd crack on and exchange ideas, and then we'd be off home to our partners. And what the business plan did to us, it didn't create a blueprint for how to get clients. What it did, it just focused our minds on and made us more informed, and allowed us to react more quickly when some of our ideas from the plan didn't work out, because we were just more knowledgeable. And we had this kind of practical starting point to go from, if that makes sense. We had all sorts of ways that we were going to get clients tasked out in the business plan. And actually, Google advertising was one of them. And we had a couple of other ideas as well. And in fact, we had lots of ideas, and it was way too broad, the amount of things we were going to do to get clients. And in the end, Google advertising turned out to be the thing we put a lot of our energy into. And we came out a way of predictably working out how many of the leads coming our way would actually end up in an instruction. And that was vital, being able to know roughly how much of what was coming in terms of leads and how much you were spending is actually going to end up in an instruction. And it was almost quasi-academic work in a way that led to that. It was a lot of hard work. You know, the business plan was the start of it. And then it was the testing. It was during the startup phase. You know, tried that, didn't work. Tried that, didn't work. You know what? We got lots and lots of help. We've always been really sociable guys. Everyone from our friends to industry associates, we'd always get out there and listen to what people had to say. And for example, my best man and best friend works for Mallon Publishing and the sales team there. And was just describing how to go about experimenting with sales strategies, and when something isn't working, being brave enough to cut it and move on to the next thing. And that sort of process of learning enabled us to get those, to start growing that business.
Yeah, and I think that you've literally just kind of segued into something that I was just thinking about. The landscape of Google marketing, right? In 2015, very different compared to where we are now.
Indeed, yeah.
So many more people have flooded into the Google marketing space with smallish budgets but big dreams, and then it becomes an oversaturated market, and then very quickly you end up paying top prices for the clicks if we go down that path, or for the phone calls if you go for the local service ad route, right? So at what point do you kind of pivot within your business and think, what once worked is no longer working? Is that a process that you would go through over a 3-month window or something? Or is it literally just as it feels instinctively right to kind of tune it out?
I mean, we still use Google advertising now. And it's always been a strong point within the business. But of course, what happens to all businesses is their network grows over time, and it's very organic. We read a lot. And a lot of the reading that you will do around this topic just talks about networking, of course, and talks about building a network the right way as well, and not doing it in a way which is having over expectations, and kind of being that weird guy in the room who's really bothering everybody all the time
consistently.
Because that's not what networking is. It's actually building genuine relationships over time. It's quite hard to pinpoint a moment where we pivoted. I don't think it really was like that. I just think it was the organic growth of the business. We always did that. It's just that more people wanted to network with us, the more successful we became. And now we find ourselves, having really strong good, genuine relationships with people from across the sector. What helps overall, though, is having stayed true to our original values and providing a good service at the same time. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that kind of soft power in a networking environment to be able to grow things.
Yeah, totally. And then that piece there around service and quality, I know for us in particular, London Drainage Facilities, that for us is a key component to everything that we do. And I know that that's felt throughout your business as well, having interacted with members of your company. It's very clear and evident there's different streams when we're getting service given through to us. What kind of importance or advice would you give to people, perhaps starting out in your industry, right, that won't have come from that degree of high levels of customer service and that interaction point? How important do you think that is moving in, and what advice would you give to people?
I think you have got an advantage when you're starting a new business straight away, in that you've got less complexity straight away than a business like mine.
Yeah.
Once we got ourselves up and running, once we felt a bit more confident, there was a period after about a year or so where it was a mixture of being very small still, but having enough sort of operational organization behind us, where actually in some respects, just by working harder and wanting to work harder than bigger, more established firms, sometimes we joke it was like taking candy from a baby. When I say that, I mean the big boys. You know, the big boys at the top of our game. They do some great stuff, but they also struggle, and they continue to struggle with bureaucracy, and sometimes, unfortunately, the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing, and there being way too many people and way too many brains needed to resolve a single issue. And so, what the advantage that you have when you are small, I think it's fairly well documented, especially in my sector, is being able to just deliver on service, give a quick answer to things that you can't get a quick answer from one of the big guys. The property managers in our sector, in the smaller firms, they tend to be able to give quick answers, really take advantage of that. They tend to have a more rounded knowledge of the building as a whole, rather than having to go, well, I'll speak to my major works team, or I'll speak to my maintenance team, or whatever it may be. What I found really refreshing as a property manager who started a business was kind of, if somebody asked me a question and it was a complicated answer because of a policy issue, well, I could just decide there and then if the policy was right or wrong or not, and change the policy. And so you could be in a flat and say, hang on a second, well, actually, you know what? The process doesn't work there. You know, we're going to update that tomorrow. That is the advantage you've got over a larger firm who doesn't have that kind of speed.
That nimbleness.
That nimbleness. You've got to figure out a way as well as you grow, though, of not losing that. And there's all sorts of theory on this stuff. And there's some great business management theory books that we've read over the years that have kept us on our toes to try and not get too far away from that. And inevitably, you can't have that situation. And in fact, it's undesirable when you start taking on large developments for policy changes to be so quick and fast. But I think when you're smaller and you are so nimble, that's your advantage.
Yeah. And how do you kind of adapt and pivot to that point? Because at the size of what you are now, we just talked about this a moment ago, right? Where you're sat at 60 odd people within your organization now. And we can very quickly, I think about it within our organization, we will do a huddle, for example, right, on a Monday morning, and that'll be a download time for my team in various sectors of it to feed into me what's been happening as a week roundup. And obviously throughout the week, you try your best to keep your finger on the pulse to understand what's happening. But how do you keep that ear to the ground and that level of flexibility as you do start to grow? How do you find managing that, and what kind of tips or strategies do you put in place to try and keep your hand on the business?
We talked about earlier how I had 60 staff members or so at the moment, or we have 60 staff members or so at the moment. Actually, in the block and estate management world, when you start taking on large schemes, you become the technical employer for the site staff on lots of these developments as well. It always used to be the case that the client was the employer. Increasingly, we, the agent, are the employer. And so you actually have a situation where even though the flat owners are paying service charges that pay the salaries of on-site staff members, we effectively are the legal employers. So beyond the core staff that you might call the core staff, we also have 70 site staff members across our schemes, now outnumbering our core staff. And we're not as directly able to influence certain things because the clients have a lot of say over them, but we have a huge responsibility for them also. And so, yeah, it is a big challenge. And that's why one of our core values is we're always learning, because you can't pretend that you know everything. You can't rest on your laurels, and you have got to keep learning. Otherwise, you just fall behind. What we've implemented at JFM to try and keep our nimble startup approach is a system called objectives and key results.
OKRs.
OKRs. So you're aware of them?
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah.
John Doe, I think, was the guy that originally kicked it off. Intel, I think. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. John Doe from Intel.
Yep.
It's one of the seminal books that we've read, James and I. We have a JFM reading list, which everyone has access to, and we also leave reviews and comments about them on our CRM software. And objectives and key results really, really spoke to us because it's a way of setting headline company goals and connecting people throughout the organization to them through their work. So we use task and project management software at JFM. So we use Asana, and it's quite well geared up towards OKRs, objectives and key results. Objective is the place where you're trying to get to. The key results are the steps that get you there in the most basic possible sense. But there's a whole framework of thinking about how you then cascade that down through an organization. And in a nutshell, through about a 50-50 mix of management saying what they want and the people further down the chain saying how they're going to get there, rather than the other way around, rather than being told what to do the whole time, creates a bit more connectivity up and down the organization. People at the lower levels of the organization can see how their work connects to the headline company vision. Because what often happens in a large organization is the staff on the front line, they become more disconnected from the management. And one of the biggest complaints, and we've been there from staff, can be, we don't know where the direction of the company is. We don't hear from management. And I think the good thing about OKRs is, provided they're executed correctly, is people are open. So if you go into our office, you'll see TV screens with our headline company goals, with progress bars showing how close we are to them at any one time. So we've got 3 at the moment. Actually, everyone's work is connected through our task management software towards the completion of those goals. And so it's a way of harmonizing it and bringing everybody together and pulling everybody together towards a shared common vision. And that really, really helps, because then when you're at staff do's and staff events, you can call people out for their great work towards that goal that's on the TV screen, and everyone feels a bit more connected.
Absolutely.
And so we're sold on that thinking, and that's how we deal with that problem that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I think it's quite typical in most businesses, for example, right, that they would adopt a KPI based version of monitoring staff, your key performance indicators, and then that quite quickly can blur into micromanagement if you're not careful. And then I suppose you then grow that dissatisfaction within a workforce and the team. And I suppose as that grows, you then find that disconnect between, as you say, people that are just starting out in the companies compared to a senior leadership team or beyond. Yeah. So for you and your team, OKRs were the preferred method to kind of go down. How long have you kind of steered into OKRs for? How long have you had that going on?
We're in our 3rd cycle of OKRs. The first one was very challenging. Yep. The second one was less challenging to create, but actually, arguably, the goals weren't quite as good as the first. Yep. And we're in our 3rd section now. We think this is probably the best cycle yet. Yep. And we've got a lot of automation built in. So the great thing about having a task management platform that supports that model, OKRs, is that you can build in automations. Yeah. So people are working on projects in something like Asana or whatever it may be. Yep. It's got that automatic completion rate that feeds up to the progress bars. Yep. And that really helps, because what we were finding with our first iteration of OKRs is that people were having to manually say where they thought the goal was across the organization. The goals at the top, and then the sub goals down, the sub goals below those. And that was leading to A, dissatisfaction and frustration with the process, and B, a less accurate picture of where things were.
Yeah.
So people have still got to make comments as to why their percentage is where it is at the moment, but we've gone for this sort of semi-automated method. Now, not everything can be automated. Some of them still have to be manually updated, but a lot of the sort of project work, right, we need to go from here to here. The key result for achieving this particular marketing launch is ensure that 50 people are being contacted by X date. Well, you have a project for that in Asana, and that's automatically connected to your public goal, and that key result is automatically fed by the people's work. That really helps, and it really helps with motivation as well. People can see those progress bars moving, and we all get behind it.
Yeah. And do you find people coming into JFM that would have come from other agencies, other companies, and so on and so forth? It's typically, I would imagine, quite a refreshing thing to walk into, to kind of see that OKR model, as opposed to, as I say, your standardized KPI performance review based setup, right? I can imagine that's probably felt.
Yeah, I think I think people have different reactions. I mean, it's just part of the setup at JFM that is, I guess, quite a tech-friendly setup. So we have dashboards for all our major risks, dashboard for all the major service items, and they sit alongside the OKRs. So I think for some people it's really refreshing. They love it straight away. They say things like, "This is just what I need," and the way we represent how things are done is very visual. So they love the fact they can say things like, "This is exactly how I would have set things up. This is exactly the sort of thing that I was aiming for, but I had nothing. I had no way of sort of expressing it." And so you get some people that frankly, it's a bit of a culture shock, but then they get used to it, and then they see the value of why we're doing it that way. And they might have come from firms where things are really outdated. There's some firms out there that still have lots and lots of paper files. And so it's a bit of a culture shock at first. But you know what? As time goes on, they get into the swing of it.
Yeah. And from your perspective, if you're going to look now towards the competitive landscape, right, that you're within, what does that start to look like? Would you say the competition has become more over the years as it's going on? Or would you say some of it's died off?
So this is an interesting question because there's major consolidation that's occurred in our market space in the in the last few years. All the bigger players, like the firm that I first started at, Crabtree Property Management, have coalesced and consolidated and are forming into almost like mega companies. The First Ports of this world, and the rental renters of this world, being bought by Amiria and Ardivo, respectively, and are now part of international corporate property companies. You then got at the lower end of the scale an explosion, according to the TPI, who took over the Armour brand. According to the TPI, there's been an explosion of boutique block and estate management firms really operating at a much smaller level than we are, operating at 500 units or sub 500 units sometimes. Sometimes one-man bands, two-man bands, three-man bands. And these guys are really, really hitting it hard in service, struggling with things like compliance, struggling with things that you need big, perhaps, software investment to deal with. But nonetheless providing great service in their space. The middle ground, I was informed when I sat at a panel, a TPI panel, Zen Armour panel last year at a conference, that we were an endangered species. Firms operating at our size, we're looking after 10,000 homes, or approaching 10,000 homes right now, and we are independent. We mentioned earlier on having 60 core staff members. We're an endangered species according to the CPI, and I was informed that it's somewhere around the 40 mark left in England and Wales altogether.
Wow.
At that time. It might have changed since then. And we were surprised to see ourselves listed in the same place as some guys we consider to be big. I mean, that threshold is between 7,000 and 40,000 units. So from that point of view, we're actually arguably low on competition, because so many people in our space have been bought out by the big guys, and we have no interest in that. We're interested in being independent. And what that means is we're able to provide the industry with an independent, customer-focused service, while still being big enough to be able to cope with some of the big challenges of the day, fire safety, for example.
I think that's the thing as well. Certainly looking at our side, more the supplier type of side of the industry, I would imagine, right? There's so much in the way of consolidation that is obviously happening. London Drainage Facilities, our brand, for example, we accepted private equity last year. We've got PE back in, and really for us, the kind of plan and the aim for that is to strategically grow, right?
Yeah.
So London by name, Southeast by nature, really is kind of the strapline that we adopt.
Yeah.
But coming with that is, how do you continue to serve the same level of service, or give the same level of service that we're giving now at the numbers we're sat at? So not too far in terms of people headcount wise, sat around 50 internal, 60 engineers on the road.
Yeah.
While you grow as a business, how do you continue to give that level of service? And when we compare it to other bigger brands that are out there, in actual fact, I'll probably harmonize with a lot of what you just mentioned a moment ago. You know, if you stay true to the values of what your brand is about,
Yeah.
which is turn up on time, do a great job, make sure the service and the price points are all accurate, and the people within the brand are happy and healthy, then everything else kind of falls into play, right?
That's right. And I think it's really important that people in any organization are aware of what your core values are. Sometimes people frown a little bit, and actually when we went through the process of establishing our core values at JFM, some people found the process difficult because it's kind of a philosophical exercise. Well, what are we all about? Why do we exist? And not everybody's cut out for that, but it's really important stuff, because if you want to galvanize large groups of people, you've got to have a manifesto, put it that way, for why people walk in the door every day and show up and do what they do. Because quite quickly, with large groups of people, they can become disaffected. Yeah.
I'm interested in the book list you mentioned a moment ago, right? With that why piece, am I to assume that Simon Sinek makes an appearance somewhere within the list, or are we not on that one yet?
I'm not on that one yet.
No, okay.
But I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, sure.
Compare notes, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So Simon Sinek, the basic principle behind it is effectively that. Start with why. Try to understand your why before you kind of pivot and work thereafter. What kind of books do make it in the list?
Well, it's a mixture of more modern titles. I always go back to The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People as one of the original business theory books, which is actually a very soft skills kind of a book in lots of ways, and it's arguably a bit of a self-help book, but it is regularly quoted. You'll probably hear all the time, but in modern business literature, and for that reason, I had to go back and read it. Way back when we started JFM. It's got I think it's got one of the habits is sharpen the saw, and it really gives oxygen to my belief of why reading was so good, and it really it propelled me to read even further, and that was one of the habits. And there's also begin with the end in mind. Why are we even doing this? And even at a really small level, we're in this meeting. People are squabbling. People are directionless. Guys, should we slow down a bit here? What are we trying to get out of this meeting? What does good look like? And often that can be a bit of a tonic. And everyone kind of goes, okay, right. Well, we just want to get this person on side, right? Like, how are we going to do that now? And so it has, it's packed with just useful information. It's got a lot of great stuff about relational issues in general. How we treat each other. And of course, a lot of business is about being a people person, isn't it? And how you treat people. And I like that about it, because there's very little about finance and all this kind of stuff, because it's not really about that. It's more about relationships and interactions. And that's a big part of it. And it goes beyond business in lots of ways. And I find that really useful. Another one, the coaching habit.
Okay.
I have to Google the author afterwards, but it's a brilliant book when you're a manager and you are running a business and you are looking after people, and people are throwing comments at you left, right, and center, and they're trying to give you their monkey, so to speak. You might have heard that expression. It's a great method built into that book for just dealing with that problem and actually being able to serve that person right without becoming an advice monster at the same time.
So JFM really does sound like a people-centric business.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair assumption, a fair comment to make?
Yep. Yep. Our mission statement is to create the best environment to empower the best people to provide the best property management service. We switched it from a much more technical sounding one when we first started, and we switched it in 2019.
A lot of businesses kind of go, let's focus on the profit, and then everything else will kind of take care of itself thereafter, right? And again, similarly, in the same vein, really, for us, I know that our people culture is the most important part. Kind of leaning back into the Simon Sinek part I was mentioning there, it's more about people never necessarily remember the words you speak, they will remember the way you made them feel.
Yeah.
And for us, it's a big, key, important part, an important ingredient that when we're ever having with dialogue with anyone, from our engineers to our internal staff and beyond, it's ensuring that everybody the whole way through is coming out of that with a sense of clarity and also a sense of belonging and purpose with what they're doing, right? And again, I imagine speaking with you now, JFM sounds incredibly similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, profit is important. It's incredibly important. You can't have a business long term without profit. We have philosophically always been more about servicing people first and do it right, and profits will come. And we've been fortunate enough to realize that. Our most popular core value at JFM is human first and foremost.
Right.
We actually have 6 core values, and that's number 1. And so much like your firm, we value interactions with our staff and customers really highly. And it means everything to our business. And I think you can't lose sight of that.
Totally. If you were going to kind of think back now on the journey that you've had thus far with JFM, what are some of the fondest memories and things that really kind of pick out to you? Are there any that really kind of stand out moments thus far?
It's been an absolute roller coaster being at JFM. And as soon as you said that, the first thing that sprung to mind was our first, what I call open market instruction.
Okay.
So we quite quickly acquired 3 clients that we were aware of through our network in the very early days, and they were our platform. But when we got the first client instruction who found us cold off the internet through one of our Google adverts, listened to us, heard about us, didn't know us from Adam, and then went through the very complicated steps that is often the case to instruct a managing agent, because there's a lot of inertia, and then to choose JFM in a competitive tender. I remember me and James celebrating that evening, and that was one of the best moments in starting JFM. More recently, we had an amazing sort of set of coincidences occur. Last year at the Property Management Awards on the deadline day, or sort of on the awards night, we had a meeting set up with St. George. Because we'd been through a very long tender process, which was very difficult for a large development of 1,400 homes called Battersea Reach. It was a joint decision for the RA directors, Resident Association directors, and St. George together. So you had voices of the homeowners and of the freeholder deciding whether or not JFM should be instructed on our first St. George development. It was a big moment for the company, and we won that tender competition, beating one of our highly respected rivals in the last 2. We then went up against our highly respected rivals in the awards night a few hours later, and we won London Property Management Company of the Year. And hats off to them. They usually beat us at these things, but when the team were able to come together and pull off these huge things for the company, it was the result of 10 years of hard work that got us there. You know, getting our biggest ever client, 1,400 units, and winning London Property Management Company of the Year for the first time. It was a sensational moment, and it was lovely to get all the staff up on stage in front of the whole industry and give them their moment.
Yeah, and that's such an important part. Acknowledging and recognizing the roles that all of the team are playing along the way to get you to there. And yeah, again, from the interactions I certainly know that I've had with your team at JFM, you're clearly on that mission to hire top tier talent.
Yeah.
There is a night and day in some instances when you're dealing with certain things from a supplier's perspective, right?
Yeah.
So when we're receiving instructions or receiving requests to go and complete said work at whatever the properties might be, every part of how that is handled is very clearly different. And I imagine that's something you're looking to continue doing by looking for external top tier talent now. I imagine that's probably still on the agenda, right?
100%. You know, we're waving a flag above our Harrow office saying this is the best place in property management to work. We want it to be. We've got a really strong, positive culture at JFM, and that's what we're looking to build. We want to be the best payers. We want to have the best benefits, and we want to have the best learning environment for people so that people can go further. And that is our common sense solution for being the best managing agent in turn. Bring the best people, treating the best, and they should, in theory, go and provide the best service. And it's worked well for us so far. I think I'll just add to that, our human first and foremost core value, number one, extends through to our supplier network. And something that me and James knew from day one in this business is the way suppliers were treated historically by some managing agents was not the way we wanted to be. Luckily, it's a lot different these days in the sector at large, I would say. There are still people operating in a kind of medieval fashion with regards to suppliers. I think you may know what I'm talking about. I think it's basically treating suppliers poorly. You know, we prefer to treat suppliers as part of our associate network, who we build long-term relationships with. Of course, we've got to be assertive where it's called for it, but human first and foremost at the same time, and that applies not just to our customers and our staff; it applies to our supplier network too.
Totally. How do you see technology changing the landscape for potential recruits coming through the front door?
So it's so important to keep up with technology. It was really great starting JFM. I think we thought we were reinventing the wheel by being largely paperless compared to some of our competitors when we first started out. But you know, it's moved on so much. One of the reasons why we won the Battersea Reach development is because we partnered up with a excellent tech firm called Project Arc, and happy to give them that shameless plug there because the guys have done so well to work alongside our team. That was a real example of a genuine partnership where that fused their customer engagement technology with our Asana issue tracking technology, so that our back-end task management process was synced with the customer experience, and we created a bespoke app as part of our pitch for Battersea Reach. So at Battersea Reach now, and you'll see it coming out in the industry press soon, how much we've won over the people of that development. People are genuinely seeing a huge uptick in the service that they're receiving, because they're able to open up a nice looking app that is in keeping with what you would expect to see from other industries. With a WhatsApp style environment, you'll be able to message your property manager. Your property manager can look at it at the other end. He can decide whether it's a legitimate maintenance issue, hit a spanner button, which is really easy and intuitive to use, and that creates a synced issue on our back end task management software, which the customer can't see, and we can resolve the issue at hand, and then an element of automation keeps them in the loop at all stages. You know, issue close, out on this day, whatever it may be, and that experience is what has allowed us to get where we are today. You know, and being open to that kind of technology is so important. And I think more and more people come up with these kind of creative technological solutions are going to be the ones to win out in a competitive marketplace.
Yeah, 100%. The landscape in general, in every element, right? It's evolving and changing so quickly, even down to just common prompt functions these days. In the introduction of ChatGPT, for example, right? It is coming in so prominent into working worlds these days, right? Do you see there being any kind of technological threat towards the industry in any way, shape, or form? Or
I'm an optimist.
Yep.
As a rule, a bit of a historian.
Yep.
If you look at the Industrial Revolution,
Yep.
A lot of people were worried that it would create mass unemployment. There was mass upheaval, but generally speaking, living standards were increased over time as people went on to do other jobs beyond factory work, for example.
Yep.
I think it will be the same with AI. I think there's real opportunity, for example, with AI, for the property managers to provide a much better service, much closer to what people want. Will it create mass redundancies in the sector? Will it negate the role of a property manager? I don't think so. I think the property management role is so varied, and I think that it still requires a human touch to deliver, and that's the added value that people receive. What I think will be good about AI is that it will allow property managers to carry out the mundane functions, which currently many people hate doing,
Yeah.
and double down on the human first and foremost element to the property management, and really listening to people's concerns, trying to create systems and workflows which serve people. I do think probably roles will change, but I think it'll be gradual, and you might see a bit of a phasing out of certain customer service elements. But like I said before, I feel like there'll be new roles, perhaps more exciting and stimulating roles, making use of the technology to make people's lives better.
Tuning into that theme there of the optimist within you, right?
Yeah.
When you are faced with a challenge, a daily hurdle or something, how do you kind of stay positive, upbeat, on track when you are faced with those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look after your well-being, haven't you? And you've got to keep a healthy mind. Otherwise, quite quickly, things coming at you, you'll start to see the negatives in them. It's important not to overwork. And as a business owner, that's super important. It's very hard to get the balance right. And I think a lot of business owners and senior managers hit a bit of a brick wall moment in their careers at some point where I think they might be Superman. I certainly did at one stage. And at some point they realized, hang on a second here, I can't, be coming in at all hours, getting up really early, working constantly. I went for a period where I was learning about business in the morning, early in the morning, arriving fairly early in the morning to the office, working long shifts, and repeating that constantly, and that eventually led to burnout. And you've got to work out your headspace, and you've got to work out your own well-being puzzle. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to cope with the challenges that are ahead of you, and it's got to be taken seriously. I think very often people pay lip service to it. But I learned the hard way that you can't. You've got to crack the well-being puzzle too.
Yeah, 100%. And what specific issues do you find most challenging within your particular sector? What kind of things are popping up at the moment that are real kind of headache, pinch points, hurdles?
Well, fire safety is a big one.
Yep.
The Grenfell Tower disaster sent shockwaves rightly through this country, and it's right that there's been lots and lots of activity, both on the ground and from lawmakers in relation to fire safety. I think we're all learning that the housing stock is not quite as safe as we were led to believe. It's a shame that property managers and managing agents have borne a lot of the PR bad will unfairly, and it's a shame that some of our guys don't get the prestige I think that they deserve for making these buildings safe, when actually it's nothing to do really how these buildings are built. From our point of view, we're here to sort them out, and the tools that we have are often pretty poor historically to get them sorted out. So that's probably the biggest thing right now that we're facing, along with recruiting staff, I would say.
Yeah. What common misconceptions would you say people do have about block and estate management?
I think the most common thing I can think of is that, much like when someone's paying over their rent, they think, well, the landlord is not doing a lot of the property. If you're an AST tenant, for example, and therefore he's profiting out of the money he doesn't spend on the property. It doesn't work like that at all. If you're a managing agent, a managing agent doesn't profit off the service charge. A managing agent, the vast majority of managing agents, when they're doing it right, and it's really easy to see when they're doing it wrong, have a fixed fee per unit, and so it doesn't matter. The service charge is 1,000 times more than that, or 100 times more than that. Their management fee stays the same. And I think the confusion between management fee and service charge is a big one.
If you were going to look kind of at the people within your sector, within your industry, and of course the amount of time that you've now spent dedicated within the industry, what kind of skills would you say are essential to make a successful career within your industry now?
Number one, human first and foremost, people skills. You need to you need to understand that it's not just a building full of technical items to be puzzled through. Ultimately, these are people's homes, and sometimes people say that it'd be really easy these buildings to manage if there was no people living in them. Well, there are people living in them, and it's really important to develop the soft skills around looking after people. You mentioned the 7 habits of highly effective people earlier, but looking after relationships is so important. But there are technical skills to be had as well, and increasingly more technical skills are needed. I think that increasingly tech is something that can't be avoided. It's going to give you a competitive advantage to be more tech savvy.
And would you say, if you were going to look further and think now about kind of emerging fields and emerging trends that are happening within the industry, are there any in particular that you would say this is going to be groundbreaking or changing to the industry and to how we operate on a daily basis?
Without playing our own trumpets, what our service partners have allowed us to do in terms of resident engagement is huge.
Right.
It's always been this thing in block and estate management, I think rightly so, that you can't get back to people as quickly as they desire. And I think that's historically been a well-founded defense. People often desire a hotel-style response from their block management company, when really it's not a hotel. It's a block of flats. There's a lot of personal responsibility at play. There's only so much that one person can do when they're managing 600-700 units. But with technology, I think the gap between expectation and reality will close, and it's certainly closed hugely at Battersea Reach. But because the AI functionality within our apps just allows us to get the right comms to the right people much faster, and in a semi-automated way. And I think people who don't keep up with that are going to find themselves uncompetitive pretty soon.
Let's think about the other side of what you're doing now, because you're a very, very busy man, right? And you've got multiple things and multiple plates spinning at any one time. And you're obviously on the cusp now of launching another business, another brand, the Block Coach, right? So maybe talk us a little bit through that.
Yeah, it's a bit different to when I started JFM.
Yep.
I have launched a training business called the Block Coach. One of my main jobs as a joint managing partner of JFM is to develop people. And it's a part of the business that I love. I love working with people. I love putting people on a development arc and watching them grow. I'm working with 2 trainees at the moment, and it's a pleasure because they're running their programs simultaneously, and I'm learning a lot from that process. And so I love the development of younger guys or anyone really who wants to go from A to B in terms of their learning. And so the idea of the Block Coach is that I can take all the knowledge that I currently have. I'm a chartered surveyor. I'm a fellow of the Property Institute, and I've been in the sector for 20 years. Been in block and estate management for 18 of those years. I think I've got a lot to offer people from all parts of the industry in terms of easy to access, on-demand learning. And unlike JFM, I'm not going to be blasting off and going anywhere anytime soon from my day-to-day work, which is with JFM. It's going to grow slowly, but I like to think it's going to grow slowly and become something really big. I think there's a gap in the market for someone to come along and deliver really high quality on-demand learning. And the Block Coach is going to do just that. There's going to be some online video content for people to access, high quality, and it's going to give them the opportunity to achieve MRICS status, which I was proud to achieve, but it's very, very hard to do in this sector, and that's if you're a block manager. But I also see an opportunity for, and we've spoken about this in the past, providing suppliers with a learning curve. So, short courses for their new staff members in block and estate management. It's a really scary, strange world when you're first dealing with the property management beast. And it's quite hard for people on your side of things to quickly or efficiently give people a crash course in these things. Very often, my experience of dealing with you guys is some of you guys know the industry really, really well, but perhaps haven't got the time or the words or the resources to articulate it in the way that needs to be done. And so I think there's an opportunity to provide learning or a learning experience for people from supplier side, the customer side, the managing agency side in our sector. And so the Block Coach is going to be introducing online learning courses for anybody who wants them, and the emphasis is going to be on quality.
And where did this desire to do this come from? We just spoke about this a little bit right before we started the episode. Effectively, where did that desire come from?
Yeah, some people say why when you've already got so much on your plate. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be in a business and in a joint role, which is quite unusual, sometimes a joint role is seen as a bit of a temporary thing, but for 10 years almost, James and I have been joint managing partner at JFM. That does allow us a little bit of bandwidth to entertain, our own side projects in a way that perhaps wouldn't be the case if we were a single person, perhaps with a chairman above us. And so had a bit of headspace. I've always been a creative person, as I mentioned earlier, and when I spoke to you earlier, I think we mentioned that as well. And I've always got ideas that I want to get off the ground, and like many people, they don't always go very far. But this is something that I've been thinking about for many, many years. I got to the point where I thought, well, listen, I'm going to be with JFM for the foreseeable future. But that doesn't mean that I can't begin this little project now on the side. I reached a tipping point where I thought, the creative energy has grown so strong. I've just got to make it. And so soon you'll be seeing the first online course come out, and hopefully that will be well received by people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm certainly, when we first spoke about it, for me, I can already see value within that as someone that spent the vast proportion of my career within the service industry on the other side, the supply side, right? I can already see mass value in something like that. And obviously coming from someone that clearly has made the success of JFM and all the attributes that kind of go with that, I think that'd be greatly received within the industry. What kind of strategies do you put in place to try and help you run two businesses simultaneously? I know you mentioned obviously you've got the bandwidth by being joint co-owner, co-MD, right?
Yeah.
But what kind of strategies do you put in place to help you run that?
I think it's important just to have a strategy which is phased. It's not going to launch at the speed, nor do I want it to or need it to, that JFM launched. I mean, when we launched JFM, it was our livelihoods.
Yep.
We had some government funding, and there was a clock ticking from day one. Bit different now with the block coach. Grow it gradually, build it up slowly. I'll be spending a bit of time on the block coach next week, for example, and I'll be taking a week out just to work on the block coach. And I think what you'll see with the block coach is with me and the couple of suppliers we're going to bring it to life is short, very energetic bursts of activity. And then a little bit of a lull, and then we'll go again, and a lull, and then we'll go again until it's something to be reckoned with. We hope.
Yeah, for sure. And your goals for JFM and the block coach ultimately over the next 5, what does that start to look like?
Well, with JFM, we want to be as big as we can be. We currently have a OKR, which is our major OKR. Call it a big hairy OKR. I think that's what they refer to it in the book. To make JFM capable of managing 25,000 units. So we're currently at 10,000 or approaching 10,000. We know there's a lot more work to be done to get us up to the higher numbers. We're not saying we're going to be 25,000 units anytime soon, but we want to be 25K ready, as is the buzzword in-house, by the end of this financial year, which is the 31st of March, 2025.
Yeah. It's a big, hairy objective and goal to strive for sure. Yeah. What kind of processes or parts and components would you need to bolt on to where you currently are to help that come to life and come to reality?
One of the big things that we're doing at the moment is working to make our health and safety operation even better. And currently, we are really proud of what we can do. We know that a lot of people can't touch us in health and safety. We have a system in place where we have a dashboard for every single block manager at JFM or every staff member, but where we can see the total number of outstanding health and safety actions across our entire portfolio, broken down by asset type, broken down by development type. All the really, really good data. There's some data that our external supplier network are using that we want to bring into that fold. And that's part of our 25K ready project, and that will be completed by the end of this financial period. And when we've got that, it is a bit big brother, I must admit. We'll have a window onto our health and safety risks and our client risks at a level which we don't think any other managing agent will be able to come close to. And the idea there is that we were able to satisfy stakeholders and major clients that we're best in class.
Mm. How important will the supply network play within that as you grow to reach towards that 25,000?
Super important. We do need our suppliers to play ball if they're operating within the health and safety sphere. We have an excellent compliance team, and they are very friendly, and they will assist our supplier network in giving us what we need to be able to ensure that all the documents in relation to health and safety in particular are on the system. But we do need our suppliers to be savvy and understand in this day and age when it comes to reporting on anything health and safety related. The old days are over. Scraps of paper. Haven't got the report, but we did the work. It's not going to cut the mustard. We need very well itemized reports in relation to everything that's done, and it needs to be informative enough for us to be able to click on a job and for us to be able to prove that it was done. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. And so people who can get with us, get the memo on that, as I'm sure you guys certainly do, it's going to be no problem.
Sure. We're coming close to the end now, Joe, of this episode. So there's a couple of last questions, I suppose, really for me.
Yep.
If you were going to now look back, and we've got many, many, many years, right, still of learning, growing, developing and achieving. If you were going to look back over the past 20 odd years and 18 that you mentioned you spend in block and estate management now, what are some of the key points that you're most proud of up until now?
I say, the key points. I think becoming a property manager for the first time was a big moment for me. I remember at the time struggling to pass my driving test just to be able to get the role. That was brilliant for me. Moving on to my second employer and getting that role was a major change of my first senior switch. Starting JFM, day one in business, brilliant, amazing. Getting our first open market client, as I mentioned earlier, a really amazing moment. And finally, I think that it's very hard to beat winning our biggest ever client, company-changing client in Battersea Reach, thanks to St. George and Battersea Reach Owners Association, on the same night as winning London Property Manager of the Year or London Property Management Company of the Year. It was bliss for the team, and watching the team be so ecstatic was really rewarding.
If you could go back, rewind the clock to the 16-year-old version of you and have that conversation with him, what would that conversation look like? What would you say? What advice?
I think I might have to keep it from my 16-year-old self that I'd spent so long in the business world, because the 16-year-old me was not remotely interested in business. The 16-year-old me wanted to be a rock star. And, I flirted a little bit with the music business, as some of us do, and had a great time. I don't think the 16-year-old me could imagine ended up going through the business world. Maybe I'd ask that 16-year-old self to be a bit open-minded in general about how his life was going to go. It's funny because I think, weirdly, because I never really wanted to be a businessman, and life goes like this sometimes, it ended up making me a good one in some respects. You've got some people that were born to be businessmen, and you can see them a mile off. I think with me, coming at it from a different angle mentally has allowed me to approach it with a different, just with a different view, I think. And like I said, I'm not sure my 16-year-old self would understand it, but I tell him to keep an open mind.
What legacy do you hope to leave within the block and estate management world?
The legacy I hope to leave is one where we came in and we raised standards, that we treated people better than others, and that we closed the gap between what people expect and the reality of what can be delivered on the ground.
Okay, I mean, listen, in terms of legacy, that's a pretty strong one, right? To want to leave behind, and certainly something to aspire and want to go towards. If people were considering or thinking about making a career leap and, I guess, enhancing and upgrading their career and are thinking about moving or segueing over into JFM, what would your advice be for that?
Well, we've got to have better block management careers because people are leaving the sector faster than is desirable. What I would say to people who are younger is it can be much more aspirational than it has been in the past. When I was younger, I think property management was considered, or residential property management was considered, the poorer cousin of the commercial manager world. But I think it's a travesty that you can become a chartered surveyor with a focused specific route as a commercial manager or a commercial property manager, but you don't have a residential block management specific pathway. You can go as far as asset RICS with residential block management. I think there should be a specific pathway for a block manager looking after high risk, complicated buildings these days. Everything that's going on after Grenfell, they should be able to achieve professional status in the same way that a lawyer can, in the same way that an accountant can. I think we'll get there. And it's one of the reasons why I've launched the Block Coach is to create a pathway. Now, you can achieve residential surveyor status, but you have to go outside your comfort zone and learn additional disciplines. That's what I did. I want to show other people how they can also become chartered surveyors via being a block manager, even though it's a bit more difficult these days. So hopefully the RSCS will close that loophole eventually. But I think younger guys should aspire to professional status. The same sort of level as a lawyer, the same sort of status as a accountant, and it is possible.
And if someone was thinking about segueing over into JFM from a competitor now, they might have listened to this, they might have watched this, they might have, like me, seen the journey of JFM, been inspired by it and wanted to reach out and get to know more, right? If someone's thinking about making that career and jumping over into JFM, what advice would you have for them? And secondly, what kind of journey can they expect to receive in return?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's interested in working for JFM, we always value people who are proactive. There seems to be a misconception that you have to apply for one of the managing agents through one of the major recruitment companies. You don't. I can guarantee you that. It will save us a bit of money if you don't as well, by the way. Listen, we love our recruitment partners. We're unlikely to go down the route of having internal recruiters because we think there's amazing recruiters out there, and we're partnered with a couple of them. But we like to keep them on their toes, and we do about 50-50 recruitment ourselves, just through our network, and sometimes we use the recruiters to bring in top talent as well. But it's going to give you a real competitive edge if you've got the initiative to show us that if you've got a strong CV and a strong background, and you know that you're one of the best, that you apply to us directly. Our details are online. And it will be before a hiring manager in no time. I can tell you that for sure.
Great. And Joe, if people do want to reach out and find you and JFM, where's the best place to look for that? Where's the best place people can find you?
The best place people can find us is just go on our website, jfm-management.co.uk, and you'll be able to see multiple streams. It really doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is you making that first move. So go onto our website. There's multiple streams, whether it be social media, whether it be LinkedIn, whether it be our info@jfm-management.co.uk email address. There's so many ways. Just have a look at the website. What one works for you is going to all come into the same tracker on our task software anyway.
Yeah. Joe, I think really all that's left for me to say is thank you for sharing your time and for sitting down and having this conversation with me. It's been really insightful from my perspective to get a bit of an understanding about how it all started, the journey of JFM, and where the Block Coach is going to come into it. And I can definitely see that being a valued part. I know the journey with London Drainage Facilities and JFM has been a great one up until now. Getting that understanding about your business and how it works, I only envision that continuing to be a strong brand. So thank you very much for your time today.
John, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.